Are you looking to take the next step toward investing in commercial real estate but don't know where to go? CRE Central offers a comprehensive education and coaching platform designed to help you get started. Our online courses cover a wide range of topics, from the fundamentals to advanced strategies, ensuring you have the knowledge and skills needed to thrive in this competitive industry. As a member, you'll gain access to our exclusive online community and monthly group coaching calls, providing you with valuable networking opportunities and personalized guidance from experienced professionals. Whether you're a beginner or looking to take your career to the next level, CRE Central has the resources you need. Visit www.crecentral.com to learn more. Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Investor Podcast. Today, we're sitting down with the man, the myth, the legend himself, the bearded man, Brandon Turner. Most people, when they are thinking about summer vacations, they're like, you know what, I'm going to go vacation in Hawaii. Not Brandon. He's like, I'm going to go vacation in Idaho.
Yes,
I'm getting out of Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii's just too crowded and hot in the summer, so we leave and go to the mountains where it's also crowded and hot.
Yeah, let the tourists have it during their time, and you go back and enjoy it when no one else is there.
Exactly.
So, that's great, man.
Except for I went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is where like all of the tourists go. It's like where the Kardashians got a place. Oh, yeah. Justin Bieber's got a place. Ed Milet was here for years. It's
that's true. Yeah, I mean, post-pandemic, Coeur d'Alene is kind of blown up. I bet most people couldn't pronounce that city before that.
I know. Yeah, it is one of the fastest appreciating markets in the country. And what goes up will go down, I'm sure. But, it's all right.
Hey, if you're holding it for the long term, who cares? For those of you who have been living under a rock, Brandon Turner is the former host of the Bigger Pockets podcast. He has been educating, millions of people on real estate investing for years, and started off in residential real estate, left that pretty much, and started Open Door Capital. And as of hopefully tomorrow, so probably by the time you're hearing this podcast, they have crossed the purchase price of $1 billion in assets. Obviously, the portfolio is worth well over $1 billion at this point, 13,000 units. We're going to be diving in today on scaling from residential to $1 billion in assets, the pros and cons, syndication. We're going to have a fun conversation today. Brandon, kick us off, man. It's going to be fun. Kick us off with residential. Why did you decide to scale out of that? And, what was the impetus?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I'm a big believer in what I call the stack. So the stack is a concept where it says, let me even go back a minute. Like when I used to think of people who had 100, 200, 500, 1,000 units, it blew my mind. Didn't make any sense. Like it took me a year. It took me 1 year to buy a house, to find it, buy it, fix it up, then either sell it or rent it out. Like it took me a full 12 months to do that. And I did it a number of years in a row back when I was getting started, because I was doing all my work myself and it was single family houses. And so the idea of getting hundreds, I'm like, that just would take hundreds of years. There's no way that's doable, right? Of course, then I realized you can scale exponentially. So you can buy a house and then you can buy a 5 unit, then you can buy a 20 unit and then a 50 unit, or it could be a $1 million property and then a $10 million property and a $20 million property. It doesn't mean necessarily units, but you can scale size. And the irony, and I heard this, interview after interview on the Bigger Pockets podcast, when I talk to people, they would always say the bigger deals are actually easier. And I didn't, in my head, I believed it, in my heart, I'm like, that can't be true. It's like, yeah, it sounds good to say that, probably just trying to sell something. But no, literally, it is easier because you have people. You're playing a bigger game you're playing a team sport. So imagine trying to play basketball all by yourself. You're doing every role, but as soon as you have a team, it's like you can just stand under the basket and be the tall guy who puts it in, So there's a lot of value in the scaling. So that was a big reason why, because I wanted to scale my wealth without scaling my time. And if you want to scale your wealth without scaling your time, you have to scale the size. And that's the game I decided to play.
Yeah, man, it's funny. It's kind of wild to look back when you and I met in Whistler in 2017 as part of what you were talking about back then, right? Because that was kind of before you had really gone down the scalability journey. One thing you've talked about quite a bit.
That was actually the event that I decided to do mobile home parks. That was the day I was like, I'm going to do mobile home parks. Yeah, because I interviewed a few people about it, and then somebody at the event there did mobile home parks, and I was like, you know what, I'm done trying to go back and forth. What should I do? I'm just going all in, and that was a pivotal moment in my life.
Well, I mean, tell us more. What was the reason? What
Yeah.
did somebody say where you were just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm building a
Yeah.
mobile home.
Yeah, and it's not true. What I believed, and the reason I got into mobile home park ended up not being true whatsoever. The reason I pursued it because I heard, well, tenants own their own homes, so you don't have to do maintenance and repairs. You don't have to deal with contractors. And I'm like, hot dog, that sounds great. I hate contractors. This is amazing. Little did I realize that when you own 13,000 units, half of those are mobile homes. So we got 60, 6 or 7,000 mobile homes. We deal with a lot of contractors. Like we're constantly buying homes, fixing them up, moving them in, moving them out. Like it's hundreds of contractors. Now, again, at this bigger game though, I don't deal with it, but my team sure does. But yeah, they said mobile home parks were hands off. They're just not even remotely hands off. That was not true. But they are great. They can be great profit centers. One reason why is because rent changes affect percentage wise, a rent raise is a bigger deal on a mobile home park than an apartment. Let me see if I can make this make sense. Like if you have a property that rents for $5,000 a month and you up the rent to $5,500 a month, that's a $500 increase in rent. And that's 10%. But if you were to take a mobile home that rents for $500 a month and move it just up to, whatever, call it $600, just a $100 rent raise, that's a 20% lift. So it's a smaller rent raise amount makes a bigger percentage difference. And so when you have a mobile home park where the rent is $250 and you move it to $350, that's like a 40% lift. And so when we value commercial real estate based on how much profit it makes, essentially, as a maybe crappy explanation, but it's simple. It's like you value it based on how much money it makes. And so if you can dramatically increase the income on a property because you bought it way undervalued, you can dramatically increase the value of the property. And that's what got me really excited about mobile home parks.
Yeah, I mean, your tenant base is far more price conscious and price sensitive than, a Class A apartment complex might be. I mean, looking back on it today, I mean, just out of curiosity, now that you've got 6,000 or 7,000 mobile home units, do you prefer mobile homes or do you prefer apartments?
I still prefer mobile homes over apartments. I think I prefer self-storage from an operating standpoint more than the other two, because we also do self-storage and those are easier. Like those are 10 times easier than mobile home parks, like 10 times easier.
Oh yeah.
Because you're not dealing with tenants. They don't live there. You're not dealing with plumbing. You're not dealing with any of the garbage that goes into it. Now, mobile home parks have self-storage has their own problems, and there's difficulties there, and they can get overbuilt really easy, and there's risk. But from an operation standpoint, I'd take self-storage over anything right now.
Yeah, I mean, because it's true what everybody says. Self-storage is basically apartments without the people.
Yeah.
The people are the problem.
Right.
The tenants.
Yeah, they don't pay their rent. You just put a lock on their unit and follow the law, but you put a lock on it and you auction their stuff off. It's like you're not evicting grandma in the middle of winter and having the government then tell you can't evict grandma in the middle of winter. So then you're just stuck with a free tenant who's not paying. Like you don't deal with any of that stuff with self-storage. But again, self-storage is incredibly difficult right now because everybody wants to be in self-storage, just like mobile home parks, just like multifamily.
Yeah, exactly. It's become a very popular asset class. Okay, so you make the decision in 2017 to go all in on mobile home parks. How do you go from making the decision to, passing the $1 billion threshold tomorrow? Like what is the process? And I know obviously we don't have 3 years to sit here and go through it, but give us a 30,000 foot view on that.
Yeah, it began, obviously I decided mobile home parks, but then I didn't really do anything for like a year. I was like, I decided on it, but I didn't really make any action towards it because I was trying to do everything myself. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll go out there and look for a park. And I started digging around and trying to learn it a little bit and trying to figure out how to analyze it and figure out how to get the financing. I was just doing everything myself. And it wasn't until I realized that like I'm the bottleneck. And I needed to how did other people build businesses? In fact, like a great example would be like David Osborne, founder of Go Abundance. Yeah. I'm like, how does David build companies? I'm like, well, David doesn't learn everything himself and do all the work. He hires from the top down. And Richard Branson hires from the top down. Elon Musk from the top down, meaning they hire the leaders and then the leaders go build out the company. So that's what I did. I met a guy named Ryan Murdoch and we bought a single deal together where he did all the work. He found the property, he managed it. I just brought the money and I raised a little bit of money for it. And it worked out really well. because Ryan was in charge of it. It was wonderful. I was like, oh, I get to be a visionary and not have to operate. And so that's when like the light bulb clicked, and me and Ryan are like, all right, let's do this. So we built Open Door Capital from the top down. Ryan was a starting CEO or COO. He hired a bunch of people, including Walker Meadows. After a while, Ryan realized he wasn't a good COO. He didn't like the day-to-day operations of leading it. So we moved Walker Meadows into COO, and now Walker is a CEO. And then Walker built the company. I mean, like we all pitched in, but like I wasn't the leader of it, so to speak. I'm the face of it, but not the leader of it. And that's what worked really, really well. It helped us scale up because you get people who are actually really good at operations and really good at meetings and really good at the details. And then you get people like me who is pretty decent with pulling up a phone and talking on Instagram and can raise some capital. So everyone's doing, again, team sport, right? You don't have the forward. I'm going to mess up these terms because I'm not a sports guy. You don't have the forward on the team doing what the linebacker does. No, whatever. You get the idea. You got we're mixing sports in a good way. Though that would be fun. Basketball and football.
That would be really interesting, actually.
It'd be super interesting. I just played padel. You ever played padel? That's a fun sport.
I've never heard of it. What is that?
It's like this European thing that's getting really popular over there, and now it's coming here. They just built a court in Maui at like the Billionaires Club, which is a friend of mine who's not a billionaire, but he's got a membership there. So I played. It's two sports combined. It's racquetball combined with pickleball. So you're playing pickleball, but you have a glass wall behind you and on the side of you. So you're playing off the wall as well. Like it's wild.
That's
and it's outside.
Awesome.
It's so fun. Anyway, two sports, combine them together, even better sport. Hired from the top down. We set a big vision. I said I wanted $50 million of real estate. We worked backwards from that vision to say, well, how many offers do we got to make? How many leads do we got to get? How many brokers do we have to have? How many employees do we need to have? And we then filled out our team. We did the actions we're supposed to do. And instead of buying 50 million, we bought 300 million in that time period. And now we're up to $1 billion.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy mistake to make. Accidentally buying $300 million.
I tried to buy 50 and I bought 300. Man, it's tough. I won't do it again. I apologize.
Yeah. How dare you? So, I think that's really interesting, starting with the top down. It's that top grading approach, which a lot of people don't think of, right? The first thing that most people think is, oh, I need to hire somebody to take the menial tasks off my plate. So why is that wrong?
That does work. It's just, it's a very safe way to do it. And again, nothing wrong with safe. It's a very safe and less risky way to do it. But it's also a longer way to do it because you have to slowly work your way out. Now, the objection to what I do is people are like, well, I don't have the money to hire a CEO. Neither did I. I didn't have the money to hire Ryan, so I didn't. I gave him equity. I gave him a lot of equity. I gave Walker equity. Brian Murray has equity. My whole executive team has equity. So I only end up owning 40% of Open Door Capital. Who cares? I have the best people in the world who are incentivized ridiculously well to grow my business for me. So I only get 40%, but who cares if they're going to grow it 10 times bigger than I could do on my own? I'm all about the aligning incentives. So people listening to this might say, I don't have the money. It's not about the money. It's about, are you a good leader and can you spread the wealth to everybody so you don't need the money up front?
That's right. I mean, it's such an overused phrase, but a slice of a grape versus or a whole grape versus a slice of a watermelon. Like you get the right people on the bus and 1 + 1 = 5, which is a really interesting concept.
Yep.
Well, Brandon, talk us through what $1 billion portfolio looks like, because I'm sure that a lot of people listening right now go, $1 billion. I bet Brandon is cash flowing an insane amount of money off of that now.
Much money. Yeah,
so much.
The irony is that as a syndicator, I actually make very little money, like very little. And most syndicators make very little money. And this is like something that people don't understand is even with $1 billion of real estate, like I pay myself a salary of I think it's $95K a year maybe. And then I donate that away to charity. So I don't even make a salary. So not only do I not make money, I don't make a salary either. I don't make anything really. The only money I make is as an LP. So I actually invest in every deal that I do as an LP. So I make cash flow when our deals provide cash flow, just like our investors. Now, will I make money on the end? Assuming that my deals work out, I'm going to make a ridiculous amount of money on the end, like 100 million plus off our portfolio if everything works out the way that it's supposed to. But that's a big if. And this is the key to what people don't understand is like to run a business like this, my payroll is hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. So like all the money that comes in from acquisition fees and all that goes to fund my team, to fund the payroll, and asset management fees funds payroll. It doesn't go to me. Now there are syndicators out there who live really well, and they buy airplanes and private helicopters and all that off their acquisition fees, I'm sure. But I actually really like not living off and not making money as a syndicator, because it's one of the reasons I've been able to raise so much money, is because my investors are like, oh shoot, like Brandon literally makes nothing unless we make our return. So I only win if they win. And that's a really good sales pitch if you're trying to raise capital.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great, yeah. I mean, you're entirely aligning your interests with your investors, right? Because there's so many syndicators out there. And honestly, we're seeing a lot of those chickens come home to roost, where they make their living off of the acquisition fees, and they don't really care if the asset performs or not, because they'll do, a capital call, they'll give it back to the bank. It's not their money. They made their money on the acquisition fee, right? They're charging 3, 4, 5% or more sometimes, which I think is absolutely nuts. But I mean, Brandon, when you guys were first starting this, obviously nobody was getting paid, right? I mean, it's a startup venture. And, kind of like you just said, you're not getting a significant amount of cash flow from the investments. How do you guys bootstrap it and keep the lights on while you're building something as big as what you're building? Because you're doing it the right way, right? You're reinvesting into the company to make sure that you have the all-star team that you need to run these assets properly. But how do you do that without, rice and beans?
Yeah. Mostly follow what's called the profit first model. There's a great book by Mike Michalowicz called Profit First. It basically says, instead of just seeing how much money you have in your bank account and then trying to spend that much, it's more of like, set aside how much you're going to profit, and then you pay the bills out of what's left. So we kind of operate on a kind of variation of that. But more importantly, I guess, is where's the money come from? It comes from asset management fees and acquisition fees. So we charge typically a 2% acquisition fee, and that, sometimes 2.5% on a mobile home park. But so let's say we buy a $10 million property, we'll get a check for, call it $200,000 at closing. Am I doing that math right? Yeah. So $200,000 at closing. And then that goes to fund the business. And so that goes into our account. And then every month I get a report from my finance guy, and it says, here's how much runway we have. Meaning if we stop buying today, here's how long the company can last. And I try to keep that around a year, because I don't want to ever have to buy a deal. In fact, we just actually laid off a few people in our company because we've slowed down this year pretty dramatically. And so we needed to cut payroll because I don't want my runway to disappear. We're actually should be, by next month, completely self-sufficient, where we don't our asset management and property management fees will cover the entire salary of the team, which is a really nice place to be, because now we could literally buy nothing for the next 5 years and we'll be fine. But to do that, we had to let a few people go that were amazing people, good people that did great work. It's just, if we're not buying a lot, we don't need 5 acquisition people. We need 1. And so we've had to make some shifts there. And that's the hardest thing in the world, is let good people go. But we're helping them trying to get on their feet and find new places to go, because they are rock stars. Like our screening and hiring system is no joke. So yeah, it's been that's how we keep the lights on. You just have to have really good cash management, really good understanding of where the money's at and how long you can last and where it's coming from. And that's a whole different machine I didn't know anything about when I got into this.
Yeah, I mean, that is incredibly true, because this is a business. Every single deal that you buy is its own standalone company. At the end of the day, what you guys have built is a portfolio of companies. You're a holdings company, right? And so, I feel like a lot of investors don't look at it that way. I mean, what's the mindset shift that you have to have in order to start looking at real estate and treating it like the business that it is?
Dude, that's a great question. I mean, number one is that you're not a real estate investor. You're a business owner that happens to transact in real estate. Like, your product is real estate. And like you said, every property is a business. So it needs to be run like a business, with goals set, with good financials, with reporting, with monthly reporting, quarterly reporting. Like, we need to know where the money is coming from, where it's going, problem solving. Like, you just treat it like a little company. And so, right now I've got 65, 70 companies that I'm overseeing. And so there's people in charge of them. There's people in charge of those people. There's people it's almost like a private equity company. Like, I own a company of companies, and everybody has responsibilities. And this is where, when I see people get into real estate at this level, they're trying to play the syndication game the same way they played the, buying your duplex kind of game. And they're very, very different. That's where people make mistakes. Like I have two full-time finance people just to keep track of the numbers, like just for math, which is wild. I've got two full-time HR people just to keep track of the people. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's a fun game to play. Once you get to the point where you have to have people to take care of people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
awesome, man.
it's not always better that way. Like I said, like
Yeah.
I don't make any money. Will I make money long term? Yes. Could I have made a lot of money by not doing syndication? Definitely. I could have made maybe not as much, but maybe more, because the way I'm doing it, like it's all at the end. It's all at the end. I get it if it works. And so if it doesn't work perfectly, I'm not going to get paid as much. I just like to go as big as I can. Like I like scaling. It's one of the reasons we added on self-storage and apartments, is because we just couldn't buy any more mobile home parks. We were buying the most we could possibly find in the US that fit our criteria. We were buying them as much as we could. So if we wanted to scale, we'd have to get into something else. I'm a big believer in scale. I like providing jobs for people. I love having a big team. I like that. It's not for the faint of heart.
Man, let's talk about that a little bit more, because, we've had this discussion before where it's almost like, dude, would you rather have like 5 properties that are all like debt free, or would you rather have to go, raise capital, do this whole thing? And look, there are clear pros to both scenarios, but there's clear cons too. I mean, walk us through what each of those scenarios could theoretically look like. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like if you've got a $2 million real estate portfolio that is throwing off 8% cash on cash returns, that's $160,000 a year. You actually don't need a massive real estate portfolio to live more comfortably than most Americans do.
Yep. It's true. The problem with that approach, for me, this is not for everybody. Like for me, like I got to a point where I was financially free when I was 27. I went and sat on the couch and I watched Law and Order for 6 months. Like it was a terrible life. It was a terrible life. I think for me, happiness comes and fulfillment comes from growth and from striving towards big things, and then getting up every day and saying, I'm going to just chop down this tree, until the forest is cleared, and then I'm going to find a bigger forest. And that's where I get a lot of joy and happiness from. I also love my kids and I love hanging out with them. And I'm not saying I don't hang out with them, but like if I had to spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day playing Legos, I would go out of my mind. And so, yeah, for me, like the biggest drawback of staying small is simply knowing that I didn't live up to my potential. It's like meeting my potential at the end of my life and saying, oh, I let security and comfort drive my life rather than fulfillment and happiness through growth. And so again, that's just a me thing. Other people might be like, shoot, if I had 160,000 a year and I could just settle down, I'd be good for life. Good for you. I would argue that anybody who's able to do that does not have that ability to just sit back and do nothing. Like once you get there, you'll find you're like, okay, well, I got to do something bigger. Now, could you go and shift into a mode where you're like, pastor of a church or a missionary or running a nonprofit that helps people and feeds them soup? Yeah, you could definitely do that. And there should be more entrepreneurs in that. But then I would still argue you're better off using your skill set to build more business that you then give away more money. Like if you've been gifted with the ability to make money, you should go make money and then give it away at some point in your life. Don't squander your gift, your talent of making money. That is your talent. So use it. If you want to go do good in the world, then go work hard and then make money and they'll give it away.
Yeah. I mean, the more money you make, the greater impact that you can personally have. Right. I mean, it's funny. I actually hit my like financial freedom, number, net worth, whatever you want to call it, in my late 20s as well. And it's funny because, I think you and I have a very similar mentality when it comes to this. It's like, okay, I'm not going to take $1 from the cash flow from my properties. I'm going to still, work, do the active things to make the money. And I'm going to just reinvest that. Because it's like, man, every dollar that I make is another dollar that I could put into real estate. And it's just addicting, man. It's like getting tattoos. Once you get one, you got to have 1,000.
I know. I've been stuck on Instagram, TikTok, or Instagram. Like when I'm like scrolling Instagram now, every other one's a tattoo thing. So clearly they know me and what I'm thinking about. Because so I can't stop. I gotta get myself a tattoo soon. Maybe I'll come to Nashville and get it done.
Yeah, man, come on out. I've got some great artists for you. We'll get you hooked up. But Brandon, let's dive into the state of the market, right? Because a lot of I mean, just with interest rates where they are, I mean, dude, I got a term sheet the other day, last week, on a property that I'm under contract on in Texas. 50% loan to value, 9.5% interest rate. And this is on a 10-year brand new single tenant net lease deal. And I'm like, this bank, I mean, now it's a bank I've never worked with, but I'm like, man, clearly this bank doesn't want to do anything right now. Because that's obviously not really market. But look, I mean, there's like you got Nightingale, right? Those guys went under. You've got a lot of syndicators that are going under. And in my opinion, the guys that are doing it right are pulling back, right? And doing what you're doing. You've got to put the brakes on. You've got to put everything on hold. Anybody that I see that's aggressive today makes me wonder if they really know what they're doing. Can you find singles, doubles, and triples right now? Absolutely, but nobody should be swinging for the fences, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on where the market is today and where we're headed over the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to see, you mentioned the syndicators going under. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And that's largely just due to the bridge loans, the bridge debt that we are using, which is, for those who are unaware, it's like hard money loans for commercial properties. They're shorter term. And so, I mean, I even have a few of those that are coming due, but thankfully, like our properties we generally bought with really low, loan to value. So we're at like 50, 55%. So refinancing them will be doable. And we're in the middle of it. But it's like, imagine if I would have bought them at 80% loan to value, and then the market dropped 20%. It's like you're out of options. And I'm glad we made that call a few years ago to not go and max out our LTV on every property. But a lot of guys have 80, 85% loans. So I think we're going to see a lot of them in severe trouble. I think we are going to see banks working with people because banks don't want them back. If they're good operators, the bank, my theory, again, I could be totally off on this. My theory is that the bank is going to be like, well, you're good. You're operating it better than we could operate it. So we'll work with you to let you keep going. If you're a bad operator, then they're going to be like, no, give it back to us. So right now is the time to really focus on operations. If you are one of those people who's just like struggling, it's like, you got to get real good at operations. I do think though, long-term, if we go extend out 18 months and longer, there's not a lot of people starting like multifamily construction right now because rates are so high. There's people finishing their projects, but there's not a lot of people starting new stuff. But we already had a housing crisis in America. We're already like millions of houses short or millions of units short. That's just going to compound and be even worse. So what does that mean? It means like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, like it's going to be such demand for housing that's going to jack the rents up even higher, which I don't know how you can go higher than they are, but they're going to go even higher, I think. And then the only thing that worries me about that is then the government's only going to have one tool left in their tool belt to try to control it, and that is rent control. And they're going to be like, all right, well, landlords can't raise your rent anymore. And like that's my biggest fear. And so we're not touching blue states right now almost at all, especially with multifamily. I won't touch anything that's a blue state. Not that the red states won't follow suit at some point, but the blue ones are going to fall first in the rent control. Like they already have. But like Michigan freaks me out right now. New York, Oregon, California, some of those states I'm like, oof. Like they're gonna treat landlords like the enemy because they'll have no other option, and that's just gonna create a whole other host of problems and solutions and money to be made there. But yeah, I think that's where we're headed. I think we're gonna see rents rise long term. Short term, yeah, we got to catch up on all the building that they did the last couple of years.
Yeah, in Nashville, we always reference 2016, 2017 because back then we had a glut of apartments come online then too. And everybody was thinking, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. Well, by 2018, we were back to normal. And everybody was like, oh my gosh, we need to build more apartments now. And so, and the cycle continues.
And so,
You said something earlier about 50% loan to value on your portfolio. That's something that I'm sure a lot of people are kind of floored by. And we've had this discussion before. I think that it's a brilliant approach because it is so much safer than any other way you can really do real estate aside from paying cash. I mean, I think a 50% loan to value is great. Investors should actually love that, but obviously it's going to hurt your overall potential returns, right? So, I mean, talk us through, how are you pitching that to investors? What are they saying about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, you get different types of investors want different stuff. It's like we have to teach people what the term like risk-adjusted return is. It's like, I mean, if you want a if you want a 30% cash and cash return, oh, we can get you that. I bet we're going to go do a no money down deal. We're going to do a seller carried second. That's going to be, like we can really get this thing fancy. And then if one thing goes wrong, all of a sudden your 30% return goes to negative 30%. And we see a lot of that in the industry. I would much rather hit the singles and doubles than try to aim for those home runs. So our cash on cash returns, 2, 3 the first year, 4, 5, like they're not great. Long term, can we hit 15% returns? I hope so. Like we're projecting that, but we're not shooting for 20, 25, 30 anymore. We're trying to be conservative. And even that's hard to hit in this market. Like we're still struggling with trying to get even up to where our projections were that were conservative. I want my investors to know, like, rule number 1 is don't lose their money. I say that all the time to investors.
Yeah.
Like, rule number 1 is we're going to try not to lose your money. Rule number 2 is we're going to try to make you money. But we have to stick with rule number 1 is the most important thing. And if it means you're getting a 15% return instead of a 20, or you're getting a 12 instead of a 17 or whatever, I'm going to go with that because it's my money in there too. And I don't want to lose it. And in a sketchy market, I'm going to be more safe. And that's just is what it is. And investors respond to that enough. I mean, it's hard to raise capital when you can get 5.5% in a money market and you're offering 4% on, your investment in cash flow. They're like, well, why would I do that? And then you have to explain overall return, and you're not comparing apples to apples. But still, people like that savings account getting them 5% right now. It's hard to compete with.
Your money market's not going to double in value over the next 7 years.
Exactly.
That's the hard truth of that. I mean,
it is.
It's look, if you lose 50% of your equity, right? Let's say you get foreclosed on a property, you have to fire sale it. You then have to double your investor's equity just to get back to break even, let alone start to make them some money. So I think having rule number 1 in place, don't lose money, is the best rule that you can have. All right, last question, and I hope that this is a fun one. If you had to go back to Brandon Turner in 2017 in Whistler, knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
Probably no B players. Like don't hire for convenience. Hire for the best. And that's a lesson that I've had to learn over and over and over in my life. Is my natural reaction to hiring anyone is, who do I know? I always think, who do I know? Who's around me? Or I see somebody and I'm like, I like them as a person. I like them because they're like me and we get along well and we could drink a beer together. It'd be great. We had a great time at the bar. I should hire them to run my company. Like that's the natural reaction I have. And the better approach would be, who is the number 1 greatest person on this planet to do this role? Let's define what characteristics would make the best person, what experience level, whatever, and then go after that. I think in all my companies that I've built and all my experiences, that's probably the common denominator of things that struggle. And then when they get better is when you get the right person in the right seat, because they're actually good at the job, not just the person in front of me.
I love it. Well, if y'all want to go find more on Brandon, you've got beardybrandon.com. We've got odcfund.com if you want to learn more about Open Door Capital. Brandon, where can people follow you and plug Better Life?
Sure, man. Social media, just Beardy Brandon, beard with a Y at the end of that, Beardy Brandon. And Better Life is it's a for-profit that donates 100% of profits to charity, specifically charities that fight against human trafficking. So it is we call it an accountability mastermind. So primarily what it actually is like, and the direction we're going is like, we all know what it takes to succeed, like having a good vision, like getting your identity right on like who you are, setting big goals, setting actions, and then actually doing the things you need to do. If you just got that stuff right in any area of your life, you could accomplish it. So we do, basically performance coaching and community all around making sure you get your actions right. And it's only for real estate investors. You have to be an investor to join. So we got 1,000+ members part of this. And it's been a wild ride, giving away a lot of money, or at least trying to.
I love it. That's awesome, man. I love y'all's mission. Brandon, thanks for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your time in Idaho, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk.
Are you looking to take the next step toward investing in commercial real estate, but don't know where to go? CRE Central offers a comprehensive education and coaching platform designed to help you get started. Our online courses cover a wide range of topics, from the fundamentals to advanced strategies, ensuring you have the knowledge and skills needed to thrive in this competitive industry. As a member, you'll gain access to our exclusive online community and monthly group coaching calls, providing you with valuable networking opportunities and personalized guidance from experienced professionals. Whether you're a beginner or looking to take your career to the next level, CRE Central has the resources you need. Visit www.crecentral.com to learn more.